Let me start by giving you an overview of the work that I've been doing for the past 7 to 8 years. And I should move this. So you'll see the first thing there is called Technovation Challenge. I think a lot of you may have heard of Technovation Challenge. This is a program, an after-school program that is building a pipeline of young girls to enter STEM careers. So this 12-week program tries to get the interest of young girls between the ages of 8 to 18 and exposes them to technology. And our sole purpose is to ensure that girls, and I think you know a lot of girls between the ages of 8 and 18 who have a mobile phone, right? It's hooked, it's on their hip. This is the last thing that they'll give up if you ask them to give up something. And so what we want to make sure is that they are not just passive consumers of this, but they're active producers of it. They actually get an ROI from their countless hours of having this in their hand. So what we try to do is make a program that exposes them not only to the idea of technology, but also entrepreneurship. Our curriculum is made up of the MIT's app inventor. It's really block type of code. But wrapped around that is this whole idea of how to do a startup. So you know, they understand things like how big is your market, and how will you get to them, and how will you grow, and can you pitch, and how's your competition, and can you present at a very young age. And so what we found is when you give young girls these skills, they are able to absorb it like sponges, and they can come up with amazing, amazing solutions. This program started 7 years ago here in Silicon Valley, and it was only in the US for the first year. Over the last 5 years, the program is now global and in over 100 countries. That's right, 100 countries. So the program has really grown. And the reason it's grown is for two aspects. Number one, our curriculum is online, which means anybody, anywhere in the world can participate in the technology. And number two, it's free and it builds a community. So the way the program goes is that someone like me or someone like you, right, could be a mentor for the program, and then you have 5 girls who are with you, you're their mentor, and together you learn the curriculum. And so you can imagine this scene, right? There's a small classroom at Google that they're given for this program. There's 5 mentors, 25 girls, and together they're going through the program. This scenario is replicated around the world, from Armenia to Zimbabwe. Since this is a competition, what happens is once the girls pitch their ideas at the local level, like say in Nairobi, then they have to participate in the semifinals, and then the finalists come to Silicon Valley and pitch and present to real VCs. So it's sort of a very interesting and great competition. Last year, teams from Kazakhstan won, and the previous year, teams from Nigeria won. So you can see that it's very global, and their ideas, their pitch ideas, they're superb. And I invite you all to come to the World Pitch celebration this August for the 2018 season. So that's Technovation, really good growth story, and we're reaching a lot of girls. The next thing is the TechWomen program. This is a US State Department program which brings in women from 21 countries. And these women are usually in senior technology roles in their countries. And then it pairs them with women in similar roles here in Silicon Valley in technology companies. And so that exchange of ideas and that sort of connection and network sharing is very valuable, not only to the women who come and visit, but also the women who are hosting them. And what happens is when these women go back to their countries, they're able to take these new networks, these new ideas, these new terms, the lingo, right, back to their countries and adapt it as they want. And so they're sort of spreading the word for women and girls into their countries. So far, so this program started in 2011, and so far we've had 500 women come here, and then that means we've got 500 mentors here who have been affected, right? So you can see that there's a network effect going on with a very big program at a national level. And then that brings me to an even broader sort of scenario, which is the United Nations. So in 2016, the UN formed a high-level panel to look at the women's economic empowerment from different perspectives. Can women be economically sustainable, right? Can they do it for themselves? And what is it that's keeping them from doing it? And as you know, there are so many things that can affect a woman's economic well-being. And so the panel was made up of the World Bank, the International Labor Organization, the International Monetary Fund, the World Economic Forum, NGOs like Oxfam, heads of 5 states, so heads of 5 countries participated in this, and those countries are Costa Rica, the United Arab Emirates, India, and I'm missing 2, but there were 5. And also, importantly, that panel had a representation from Silicon Valley because, as you know, technology touches us in all fields, right? Whether it's healthcare or education or entrepreneurship, technology is everywhere. And so they had representation from Silicon Valley on that panel, which is super important. And while the panel looked at a variety of issues like labor laws, cultural norms, pay gaps, etc., our focus on the panel was on the digital inclusion of women and girls. So we worked with the 5 countries that I mentioned to you, and also with the big companies here in Silicon Valley. So we brought the people on the demand side, right, the countries who know what their women want and who know where their women are and how many women and what state, and then the providers of this technology, which are the companies like Facebook and Microsoft and Intel and Google, and we brought them together for over 8-month period and tried to understand the supply and demand and how to make this more of an ecosystem. And so we really sort of wanted to look at that at a very high level. And so the overall focus of my work has been at different levels, as you can see. And I think when you take all these together, we are making a real impact at many different points. But what has struck me lately is that all this effort that I'm working on and that so many people are working on is to get women and girls an equal chance into existing structures with existing modes of working and existing companies. And most of our world works in a very hierarchical power structure. These very tall buildings with very thick glass ceilings in them. And so what we're doing, right, that whole first PowerPoint that I had was saying, yes, let's get women and girls, and we've got to go, and we've got to join this, and we can't be left behind. And we're going to go into these ceilings with these structures, with all this autocracy that we're going to have to work really hard to participate in. And so the title of my thing was Beyond Glass Ceilings, and I hope you get a little bit of what I'm trying to say here. Since we live in an autocracy where the powers are usually at the top and they're usually concentrated there, it's going to be an uphill battle, and we have to do that battle. There's no 2 ways around that. But what's happened recently is that there is another option. On the right-hand side, right, the green part, those are emerging platforms. And those are companies where it looks more like a democracy, right? And these are Web 3.0 emerging technologies. And so with these technologies, it's possible that we see more meritocratic, more democratic, and more decentralized power systems on that side. Now, some of the technologies and ideas on the right-hand side have been around a while. This is not a new idea. So a lot of you know about the open source movement, right? It is not an autocracy. Anybody can join and anybody can participate. And so is Wikipedia. Everybody's allowed to contribute, right? And there are no gatekeepers as such. And there are many, many more emerging technologies that are coming up in the Web 3.0 environment. So for example, the blockchain is sprouting a whole generation of systems. These systems are being built now, so we need to ensure that as these systems are coming up, and they're new, that we are present to make sure what the power structures will look like in those systems. Now, while Wikipedia was part of that green playing field, right, and there weren't that many barriers to entry, right, we didn't participate. Women didn't participate as much. There isn't enough content. We've all heard about this lately. And so one of the reasons we didn't, right, was because there was a different mode of engaging in that. It was a very contentious discourse. You had to have a really thick skin to be able to contribute to anything on Wikipedia, because there's a lot of back and forth and a lot of heated discussions. And that's one of the reasons that they've said that women didn't participate so much. And so we stayed away. And what's happening right now is, even though there are new technologies that are bubbling up in that Web 3.0, we are not embracing them. This is a picture of a recent cryptocurrency conference. And I don't know if you can see it. It's not very clear. But it's mostly men. And so I think the thing is that there are Web 3.0 technologies that are in the very, very early stages, like the very early days of the internet, right? Where things are bubbling and forming, and some will stay and some will die, right? But the point is that all that stuff is happening by a whole new generation of men who are taking an active role in it. And so what is it that's so different about these decentralized and Web 3.0 systems? Well, I think you all remember a few years ago there was a saying that said, software eats the world. Is everybody familiar with that? Yes? No? Software eats the world? Well, you know what software eats the world was basically saying that this thing took away the need for your watch. It took away the need for your Rolodex. It took away the need for you to have a map in the car. It took away the need for you to have an MP3 player. Software allowed all those things to come in here. That software eats the world. And that was a few years ago. What's happening now is that I think we're moving into a software eats governance mode. So let that sink in for a little bit. Software eats governance. What does that even mean? Well, the governance is moving away from these tall structures, right, where we've got all these hierarchies and we've got a few people at the top saying exactly what's going to happen. In the new playing fields, the governance is in the system. It's built into the software. So if you guys know anything about blockchain, right, the blockchain is looked at as a really new type of platform because there's no one person in charge of it. There's no one person who controls it. It's a block, right? It's a block of different people, different chains coming together and saying, yes, this is the one entry in the ledger, and it's been verified, right? So these structures, these new structures, should be something that we should really embrace, because that's what we want. We don't want to compete in an autocratic world, because it's always going to be a catch-up game. But if we work on the right-hand side, and if we're involved from now, from the get-go, into these new structures where the software is shaped, it's baked into the governance is baked into the software, then we have a better chance. Let's see. Governance is moving from the embedded structural platform to the one that we're so desperately wanting to be a part of. So it's moving from this right-hand side all the way over to the other side. Now, many people think that things like cryptocurrencies and ICOs et cetera, which are based on the blockchain, are a fad, right? Many people think that, and many people will be right. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about software eats governance. And that's the opportunity that we have to form new power structures. Does anybody here want a new power structure? Yeah, you know, all of us, right? Okay, so this is super important, and there's a lot at stake. Take, for example, the autonomous vehicles. They're coming at us hard and fast, right? And what we see here is, do we want these big players to define the future, which, by the way, is a massively big, lucrative market. There is so much money to be made in this. So do we want the same people, the same autocracies, to have all the power and to make all the decisions about autonomous vehicles and their massive impact to our society? Or do we want to move to open systems where cities, drivers, services, us, women, should have a say? And we can define how these systems should work and who reaps the rewards of these systems. So by engaging with decentralized systems, we can set new ways of engaging and not accept the status quo. Look, this is 2018. We still have a long ways to go. We still need to break glass ceilings. That job is not done, right? But we can look beyond that. We can look around as well as we're doing the upward breaking stuff, and we can start to put effort into the new sort of democratized environment. The opportunity in front of us with the new decentralized ecosystems is that they have governance in their structure. And so by engaging with these early on, and I'll stress the fact early on, so that we don't miss the boat yet again, is of super important. And then we can help shape and deploy and make the engagement different. And I'll leave you with that. Thank you.